Hello, Market Watcher. I'm David Ravel, and this is the value side for Thursday, June 10. Today, supply shock or inflation? That's the question. Then the latest corporate results, as well as today's economic news, coming right up. It's the thing that has captured the imagination of nearly everyone on Wall Street, and we're currently living through a period of rising prices. But is it because of a temporary supply shock, as the Federal Reserve says, or have our circumstances so changed that now inflation has become a way of our life? Now, to an average consumer, this may not make much difference. Without a doubt, all of us are facing higher cost of living. Certainly at the gas pump and the supermarket, our two most visible measures of inflation, prices are going up and up. Where I live, gasoline is about 50 to 60% higher than it was last year. And when I go shopping, it's higher prices all around. Now, for those on Wall Street who believe that we've turned the corner to a high inflation era, they certainly have a lot on their side. There can be no doubt that consumer prices at the most basic level are definitely escalating. And then there is this policy of seemingly endless money printing, from the trillion-dollar rounds of so-called stimulus to now the trillion-dollar infrastructure plan of this administration. There seems to be no end to their willingness to degrade the value of the dollar. And I take this very seriously, as this is an overall approach that can lead to an economic disaster. And if we continue down this path, inflation, no doubt, lies at the end of our journey. But to me it seems that we're not there yet. Oh sure, we're headed in that direction, just not yet. I fall into the supply chain shock camp currently as a better explanation of just where this economy is at the moment. And over the last couple of days, we've seen that supply shock, but not yet inflation, in the release by both Japan and China of their overall inflation rates. Both countries are experiencing what for them is high inflation at the producer level. Japan's producer prices, announced last night, came in at nearly 5%, while China's, announced the night before, that their PPI was an astonishing 9% rise. Huge numbers for both countries, and a clear indication that producers are having a difficult time securing the raw materials and components that they need to complete their finished goods. In other words, supply lines around the world are not functioning like they should. And this is the real everyday impact of the economic lockdown that global politicians put in place as a reaction to the COVID-19 virus. And everyone I read is underestimating just how devastating that lockdown was to businesses everywhere. The relationships between vendor-suppliers and clients are the most delicate balance of supply-demand. Producers need supplies that are readily available at an appropriate price to remain competitive. And they just don't have that right now. Either the raw materials are not available on time, or that they are in such supply that prices are simply too high. It's a Gordian knot, like one of those traffic jams in a small European city. It will take literally weeks, if not months, to work through. Each producer client will have to work with each vendor supplier to get things back to normal. It will be one-on-one, step-by-step, redoing a process and relationships that took years to establish, and it won't happen overnight. So does this mean that we're stuck now in a world of high inflation? Not necessarily. Again, look at both Japan and China, and notably their inflation rates for May were both negative. Overall inflation in China for the month of May was down 0.2%, while Japan's overall inflation for May was down 0.4%. So perhaps the Federal Reserve is right after all. While there is definitely inflation at the wholesale producer level, a clear result of the supply chain issues, it has not yet translated to overall inflation in either China or Japan, and perhaps the same will happen here. Now, in just a few minutes, we'll get the latest report on inflation provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So as I say, in just a moment, the latest inflation numbers, both the core rate, that's without food and energy, and the overall rate of inflation. Also in just a minute, the weekly release of the numbers of unemployment. Hopefully, we'll see a continued trend of fewer new applicants for unemployment relief. In earnings so far this morning, disappointing results from Fuel Cell Energy, while very positive reaction to Signet Jewelers' earnings report. Then later this afternoon, we'll hear from pet supply company Chewy and publisher John Wiley & Sons. And that's the value side on this Thursday, June 10. I'm David Ravel. Please join me in praying that our country may get back to work.